we're okay?
Hey, where is it going? Okay, Jane. Can you hear me?
Okay, good afternoon, members. Councillor Philip Evans, we can start the meeting. Do you want me to bring the public in? Thank you.
Right, well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the meeting of today's licensing subcommittee, which is being dealt with on a remote basis. My name is Philip Evans. I'm chairman of the licensing committee, and I'll be chairing the meeting this afternoon. We have carried out a sound check and everything seems to be working satisfactorily. So can I assume that everybody can hear me? Yep, right, good. In addition to the three members of the subcommittee, we also have officers present who will be assisting us in our discussions, together with those members of the public who've made representations on the application that we're considering. They will be introduced at an appropriate time. The meeting is being recorded and will be available to view through the council's website following the conclusion of the meeting. My two colleagues this afternoon are Councillor Bob Squire from Old Colwyn and Councillor Mary Doyle from Colwyn Bay. At the conclusion of the public meeting, this meeting will be closed and the members of the subcommittee, together with our legal advisor and committee officer, will retire to consider the application and any representations that we have taken into account. The legal advisor will prepare the decision for us, and the decision and the reasons therefore will be issued within 5 working days of today. For those viewing the recording, committee members are indicated by an asterisk next to their name. If you wish to speak, please use the hand function. You can also use the chat facility, but please note that I may not be able to monitor the chat facility during the meeting. All microphones will be muted, and if you've indicated that you wish to speak, you will be invited to turn your microphone on. If you leave your device for any reason, can you please ensure you are muted and turn your video system off. Right, now for the members of the public, you will have had a pack of information. Within that pack, there is an agenda item 4C, which is the procedure for hearings. Can I ask, has everybody involved received that?
Yes, Chair.
Yeah, Mr. Roberts, BB. Well, we will take that as a yes, because that'll save me going through all this, because you don't want to be listening to me for a further 7 or 8 minutes reading all that, which I would normally do if this was a live hearing. So we'll proceed now with the business of the committee. Item 1 is the apologies for absence. Madam Committee Officer.
There are no apologies, Chair.
Any declarations of interest? No, there don't appear to be any. And item 3, urgent matters, I'm not aware of any. And item 4, which is the substantive item for today, is an opposed application for the variation of a premises licence in respect of the Penryn Arms, Pendray Road in Penryn-Side. So, Mr. Donnelly, would you like to introduce the report?
Thank you, Chair. It's with regards to an application to vary for the premises licence for the Penryn Arms. As a consequence, the necessary consultation period has taken place and required public notices have been placed, and we have received relevant representations. Therefore, the subcommittee is required to determine the application, taking into account all the facts and all the evidence. On the 10th of the 2nd, 21, an application was submitted to the licensing authority for the variation of a premises licence for the premises known as the Penryn Arms, Pendray Road, Penryn-Side. The applicant wishes to vary his licence to encompass the outside areas and to remove the condition that children must leave the premises at 1900 hours at 7 p.m. All the public notices were published and displayed in the correct manner. And as said, there were representations and these have been deemed valid by the Head of Regulatory Services and with regards to noise and public nuisance. The following representations and mediations conditions have been agreed with both Environmental Health and North Wales Police in Appendix C. There were no further representations from North Wales Police or Environmental Health. Members must take the objections into account and consider the prevention of crime and disorder, public safety, prevention of public nuisance, and the protection of children from harm. The representations, as previously said, with regard to public nuisance and crime and disorder, the applicant has offered and agreed some mediation with some previous representatives and some have been withdrawn, so don't form party to this hearing. And the representative, as previously said, has agreed to conditions which will be placed on the licence subject to members' determination in Appendix C. And I must remind members this is a variation of the premises licence, not an application or a review. And therefore that nothing can be taken from the premises that it already has. It is only with regards to the new application for variation for the outside area and the changes to those conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Right, thank you for that, Mr. Donnelly. Now, we do have, perhaps at this stage, the people making representations would like to introduce themselves. So we'll start with Mr. and Mrs. Bowman, yeah? Can you turn your mic on? No? Okay. Now, BB's phone, sorry, I don't know your name. Can you tell us who you are, introduce yourself?
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. They're next door to me, Paul and Shirley. I'm not sure if they know how to switch it on. Yeah, I'm BB. I live near enough across the road from the Penryn Arms pub, and obviously I've got my issues, which have
Okay.
been.
So it's Bibette Parry is your name, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, and then Mr. and Mrs. Bowman?
Yeah, hi. We live directly opposite Penryn Arms. And as detailed in the written applications that we have made to you, we have some, it's not that we wish Mr. Roberts not to make a living and run a decent pub over the road. We just have grave consideration as to his ability to do that.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And the other person present, of course, is Mr. Roberts, the applicant, who I see you know. Right, so firstly, Mr. Roberts, can you outline your application and call any evidence you wish to in support?
Yes, I think people have got a little bit misconstrued it a little bit. All I want to do really is vary the existing license, so that because since we've started doing food, we have a number of young families who want to eat, and at the moment, if they're inside the pub, we've got to ask them to leave if they've got children by 7 o'clock. So I merely wanted to remove that, because before it was just a wet sales pub, and you know, we didn't really want children in. But recently we've had a lot more young families, especially from the caravan sites, the Pentryn and Dinneth in the summertime, and that's the only reason we wanted to vary the license. As far as the bar goes in the garden, that's more really, well, mainly at the moment because of the pandemic. It makes sense, obviously, to have an outside bar and less people milling about inside. And then after hopefully, when we've got rid of this pandemic, it's more then of a health and safety issue, because there's 2 flights of stairs from the garden to the pub inside, and it's quite dangerous both for staff, which obviously at the moment, and for the foreseeable future, it's going to be staff running up and down with trays of drinks and empty glasses. And then later on, of course, for customers, you know, we have a lot of elderly villagers which drink here, especially in the summer months. They love the garden, and trumping up and down the stairs with drinks isn't really ideal. So that's the reason we want to license the bar. The garden's been used for many years before I came here, and for the last 2 years was actually very popular last year. And I think people have, I don't know whether we've worded the thing not very well, but I'm quite surprised really at the number of people that have objected. And I'd like to assure people we don't intend, after reading the letters, to have hordes of screaming kids. We just, people are coming to eat. That's the only reason we want to have the license after 7 o'clock for the children. And that's it really, I think.
Right. Thank you for that then, Mr. Roberts. It's now open to the objectors to ask you any questions, and Ms. Parry wants to comment first. Turn your...
Hello, hi.
Well, not you, Mrs. Bowman. No, Mrs. Bowman, I asked Ms. Parry. She hasn't unmuted. Can you unmute? Thank you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, sure.
Obviously hearing what Mr. Roberts has just said then, and again, me and Mark do get on. My little boy adores him. In the application, the word events is worded quite a lot, and I think for us, where I've got worried, hearing him talk about the food things, that's not really the issue with me. It was the word events. As we know, Bodavon has events, it has parties, it has weddings, it has christenings. So this is what leads us on to then panicking regarding traffic. Would a wedding's music turn off at 9 o'clock? I couldn't imagine so. The music, again, if it's off at 9, great, but the indoor music's supposed to be off 10:30, and as Mark knows, I have seen it never is. So for us, it's just that reassurance of the trafficking, because the car park itself can only take 3 cars, which are, it's used for himself. So it's just that reassurance of how is this going to be policed? Is it going to be us having to go over, me having to go over in the morning, like I do with the dog thing, constantly go on while working full time and looking after it on my own. I personally need that reassurance that it's not for parties and weddings and christenings and all those things, that just this village is a village and it just cannot accommodate those things.
Okay, thank you. You want to respond, Mr. Roberts?
Well, I don't intend to have any more. We do have a number of funerals and christenings and things anyway, but we certainly don't intend to have any more. And we haven't actually had any wedding inquiries so far. You know, first and foremost, it's an eatery really, and we just want to vary the license for kids. I think this children thing has worried people quite a lot, but it's purely so that people can eat and not have to rush off at 7 o'clock before they finish the lunch or the dinner. And we don't intend to run it. It isn't really. It's nothing like the Davern Farm, and it never will be, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. Does that?
If I may, Chair.
Yes, John.
The applicant has already agreed with both Environmental Health and North Wales Police, and it has been passed to the objectives for consideration that if it's so determined, the members will add a condition on the licence that no live music acts or functions other than background music, low-level music, will take place in the outside area, and all such background music will cease at 2100. So the applicant has already agreed to that to be applied to the licence. So none of the activities, as said, can take place, and any activities that do take place, which is background music, will cease at 9 o'clock. If the members determine that that would be a fit condition.
Okay, thank you. Does that answer your question, Ms. Barry?
Again, it goes down to who's policing this, because like I've said again, you know, I do go into the pub and, you know, etc. and things like that. That's the issue. The issue is the amount of times I've had to text Mr. Roberts, I've had to call Mr. Roberts, I've had to go over in the rain at 3 o'clock in the morning, you know, whilst I'm working, whilst my child is disturbed. And yes, he apologised. But
3 o'clock in the morning, sorry, what? Because people we never have anybody in the pub at 3 o'clock in the morning.
There's been times I have to come over at 3 o'clock in the morning and the dog bath.
Oh, the dogs, yeah. Well, I must apologise about the dog.
I know it isn't just a vendetta against you. It really, really isn't, and I can't stress that enough. It's just, I know you need to, you know, earn a living, and I support it. You know, you know that I get on with you. It's just the amount of sleepless nights that I've had to have.
I've got a bit of good news for you. I'm hopefully moving up the back here, so the dogs won't be as much of a problem.
It's just, you know, like,
I am sorry about that.
And also for me, it's another added worry. The indoor music, the outdoor music, the events, the people leaving, the taxis come in, and you know, it's just another worry of me thinking, I work 5 days, I can't have these sleepless nights all the time.
Yeah, well, I assure you, if you give me a ring and any noise issues, and I'll address them straight away for you.
Okie dokes.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Bowman? Can you unmute?
Okay, hi. Yeah. My problem, without wanting to appear rude, is that I'm finding it very, very hard to believe anything that Mr. Roberts is saying. He said that he erected the outdoor bar at the start of the pandemic, and because of the pandemic, which is an absolute lie. It was actually put in before the pandemic even started. That outside bar had already been there, and it had been put there without any proper notification to us to object to the planning. Furthermore, he also said that he's never had to call the police to his premises. We have actually forwarded to you 2 documents that highlight 2 police incident numbers, one that's currently ongoing where underage drinkers have admitted to drinking in that bar, and they are now going to court because of their actions. They've damaged our cars. We've had damage to cars week in, week out. Now, like Bibi says, it's not that we have any personal grievance against Mr. Roberts, but we just do not believe everything he tells us. And if you grant this application, like Bibi said, the policing of it is absolutely paramount, because he will try to push the boundaries.
There's one other point Mr. Roberts made, that he hasn't had any applications for wedding ceremonies. We understand that his next door neighbour has actually applied to do just that.
So
If I may,
who's-
Chair.
Right, who's going? John?
If I may, Chair, just to clarify a few of the points, is that, again, with regards to the policing and how those premises is controlled, at present, the premises does not have any conditions on its license other than with regards to the children leaving the premises. There are very few conditions on the license, and once if the members determine that this license is granted, the conditions on the license cover the entire premises, not just the varied part of the premises. Mr. Roberts has agreed to that. With regard to your point where the breach of the condition that music and entertainment must stop at 10:30, there isn't such a condition on the license. And in theory, the license can operate for a 24-hour period in accordance with the Licensing Act. So any reduction that's been done has been done at the behest of the license holder. I must also point out that the premises has committed as a condition and as agreed, should members determine, that record any concerns or complaints raised regarding noise and the behaviour of customers using the beer garden. The record is to be kept for a rolling 12-month period and made available to authorised officers on request. It is expected that the concerns are dealt with by the premises in a proactive and constructive manner. That would mean, effectively, if you make a complaint to the premises themselves, the premises has to record that complaint. Officers that can then, either police or licensing officer with the enforcement party in this, can then go and check that a record of that complaint has been made by the premises and ensure that any rectifications have made. At present, the premises doesn't have to record anything.
Okay.
In Mr. Roberts' application for this extension of the premises licence, he said that there's never been any trouble and he's never had to call the police. Neither of those statements are true. Mr. Donnelly, you will have my email stating that there are currently 2 police cases in relation to events in November last year.
The only comment I'm allowed to make is the regard that the police have made representations, agreed conditions, and there are no further representations from the police with regards to the application.
You know, that's all very well, but we're talking about a matter of trust here. How is Mr. Roberts going to assure us that he's going to comply with all the proposed conditions attached to this application?
Well, if conditions are imposed, Mr. Bowman, he has to comply with them, otherwise he runs the risk of having the licence reviewed, and that opens up a whole vista of sanctions that can be applied to him.
Okay.
Do you understand that?
Yeah.
I do understand it, yes.
Right.
Will these conditions have to be met before he is granted the licence? For instance, CCTV cameras being put into the pub and being all those things, will they be operational before this licence extension is agreed? What I would not like to see is you granting it.
No, the conditions would form part of the application, that if it is indeed granted. So if he conducts licensable activities, they've got to comply with any licence conditions that are imposed.
Okay.
Simple as that.
Yeah.
Mr. Roberts, do you want to come back on any of these points? Can you unmute yourself, please?
Sorry. I would like to say, Mr. and Mrs. Bowman, if you've got anything you're not happy about, I'll be quite honest with you, you're very unapproachable people. You don't talk. I have on a number of occasions tried to speak to you. And, you know, the only time we've had the police, as far as I know, right, you've called them.
Yes.
Apart from on one occasion where I've actually called them myself, because we've had people there that we wanted removing. And as far as the lads that were breaking cars in the village were concerned, they were actually kicked out of the pub. They didn't have a drink. They were kicked out of both pubs actually. So, and the other thing I'd like to say is the chap next door is actually getting married in Badavon Farm, not in the pub.
Okay.
Anyway, the last thing I want to do is upset the villagers. I mean, I'll do my best to keep everybody happy. The majority of people come to the pub and enjoy it. And you know, if you've got any grievances, please let me know. Come and see me, or ring me, or however you want to do it, and I'll do my best.
Yeah, can I just add that if we do have any grievances, it's not really our place to come and see you. You are the publican, you are the licensee. It is your responsibility to run your pub in an orderly manner. We are approachable, Mark, but when we've had so many issues since you've moved in that it's just made it very, very difficult for us. And all we appreciate that you've done a lot to improve the pub in terms of appearance. You've certainly built up more clientele since the previous owner, so that is credit to you. But it has also brought along with this a lot of undesirable behaviour in the village. And that's really what we would like to see stopped. We don't want you not to be able to run a successful pub. We value that in the village. But please toe the line. Do your job properly.
I would like to say, well, I take the job very seriously, and I'll, as I said, I'll do my best. But I think personally, the clientele have improved. If anything, we don't. It's not an ale house anymore where strictly drinking goes on, and the majority of people come, eat, and we actually close earlier than the pub used to. It was my local before, and I know what went on before. Not that there was any problem before, to be quite honest. But
can I just jump in?
No, can you let him finish? I'll bring you in.
Anyway, all I would like to say is, if you do have any problem, just let me know, and I will do my utmost to keep everybody happy. The last thing I want to do is upset locals in the village, and as I said, I'll do my best for everybody. Okay.
Well, thank you, Mr. Roberts. Ms. Parry, you wanted to say something?
Obviously, I have a very close relationship with Paul and Shirley Bowman. I do have to say, I did have to call the police in December. I don't know if you knew it was me, Mark, because other people called it on the street too. There was Rowan, sorry, I've got my little boy upstairs. There was an incident where I think you were attacked, and it led on to whatever it did. There was barrels being rattled. I was petrified about this incident, so traumatized by it for weeks. So again, like others are saying, this is the issue, isn't it? It's all well and good until alcohol's involved.
Yeah.
And things then slip and things get forgotten about, and then it's us that are traumatized, us that don't get to sleep, me that has to look after a little boy when I'm half asleep. So I know what you're saying, Mark, and this is not like a vendetta against you, it's really not, but it's just so difficult to understand, to believe in what you are saying, because we have had so much trouble, even down to noise pollution from when everything was getting done. I think it was 3 summers in a row we had work vans taking up our spaces. I couldn't get into my home. I used to have to try and lift my pram over the wall to get my son in. These things all add up to where we are now. It's not us being catty villagers and just trying to ruin your reputation. It's just a build-up of so many events and so much upset that it doesn't really affect you, does it? But it does affect us.
Well, it does. Yeah, it does affect me. Yeah, that's the last thing I want to hear, really. And the incident you talk about is quite right, and that was actually my chef or ex-chef who is barred now from the Penryn Arms. He's an idiot. But anyway, I can see that is true, BB, but he's barred. He's not allowed in here anymore, Danny Wyle. And that's all I can say to you. I'll do my best to keep that. And if you just let me know any other problems you feel you have, and I will do my best to sort them out.
Okie dokes.
Right, thank you for that. Mr. and Mrs. Bowman, have you anything else you want to ask arising from that?
No other points. I'm still not convinced.
Okay. Right, I'll invite my colleagues to ask any questions or seek any clarification if they so wish. Councillor Doyle, do you have anything to say? No. Thank you. And Councillor Squire?
Can you hear me, Chair?
Yes, can hear you, Bob.
Yeah, I couldn't. The button wouldn't function. Not really. No, I think it was perfectly understood. Everything was made clear, and I'm quite happy with what I've heard.
Okay. Right, Mr. and Mrs. Bowman, you got a hand up. I don't know. Is that from previous? No. Okay. Right. What?
Mute, isn't he? Councillor Evans, we can't hear you.
No, it's all right. Don't worry. I haven't said
Thank you.
anything of any
Okay.
great importance at all. The next part of the hearing is to invite the objectors to call any evidence they wish to do so. If you feel if there's something that you have not been able to get over in your questioning, then this is your opportunity to do so. Okay. But we don't really want you to repeat what you've already said, if you follow me. If there's anything relevant to a licensable activity, then or the licensing objectives, then please say it now if you haven't already been able to say it. If there isn't, it's over to Mr. Roberts to ask the objectors anything, if he wishes.
No, as I said, get in touch, give us a ring if there's you feel you've got any problems at all, and I'll do my utmost to address them. But other than that, I've got nothing else to say really. Thank you.
I just want one point of clarity, if you don't mind, Chair.
Yeah.
Mr. Roberts, you've obviously proposed conditions forward, which you've agreed with Environmental Health and North Wales Police. I just wanted some clarity, and it may be a discussion point afterwards, but those conditions will also take place as regards to the indoors of the premises where that's exempt. Is that correct? So the CCTV coverage, the recording of complaints will be based on the entire premises, not just the outside.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Right, so we're more or less coming to a conclusion now. The issues that the subcommittee have seem to be the issues of public nuisance and the prevention of crime and disorder. We've heard what's been said by the objectors. We've heard the responses made by Mr. Roberts, and we've read, of course, the detailed submissions made by the parties present this afternoon, together with representations by other people who are not present because they've been happy with the conditions that have been suggested and agreed with the applicant. Ms. Parry.
Can I just jump in there? One of the applicants is my mother, who owns the property, and she isn't happy with what was said. And she did send another email in just to say, you know, her issue's more the trafficking side of things, etc. So it wasn't that she was happy, it's just she's got work commitments that she couldn't, you know, get out of.
Yeah. Traffic is not a relevant consideration under the Licensing Act. That's a matter for other people. That's to do with planning or highways or whoever. We're concerned with the 4 licensing objectives. Okay.
Right. Okay.
So I've no questions for the objectors, and I don't think my colleagues have either. No. And then it's open to the objectors now to make any closing statements they wish. So I'll go in the order we had previously. Ms. Parry, if you want to add anything as a sort of closing statement.
Not necessarily. Like, obviously, it's great to hear what Mark said. I had hoped he'd maybe like approached me before this, so we could have, you know, not got to this point. But I suppose at this point, if it gets granted, all I can do is trust in what he's saying and hope there's like a respect for me and my little boy, and try and work in harmony to, you know, all be happy, I suppose. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Bowman.
I'm surprised that the council can put things into silos in this way. The traffic isn't part of your consideration.
Can I point out that the subcommittee is sitting as the licensing authority for the county borough. We are governed by the Licensing Act. The licensing authority is a different creature from the council, as you refer to it.
Okay.
We can't help that. In Scotland, it's a board that does it. Here, it's a subcommittee, and the subcommittee happens to be filled by councillors from the local authority. In the same way, planning isn't the same as environmental health. You know, there are different functions that local authorities have that are discharged in a different way because the criteria for determining things is different and the legislation is different. It's not an issue we can resolve this afternoon, and it's not an issue that really it's fair to criticise the council. Okay.
Okay.
Right, having that, I think, brings us to the end of this part of the hearing. I would conclude, though, by saying, and I say this to people at every contested application or variation or whatever, that if an application is granted, even with conditions, and of course we may put other conditions on, it's not a foregone conclusion that the conditions you've seen are the ones that might be granted. If there is an issue affecting the licensing objectives, yeah, and the conditions, then any person has the right to ask for that license to be reviewed. Yeah, so everything would be in the mix. So I make that point that Mr. Roberts, I think, is fully aware of that. And it only takes one person to ask. If they've got a genuine issue that can be substantiated, then a review hearing can be held. Now, do you take some comfort from that?
That's reassuring, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, well, thank you all for your attendance this afternoon, and I'm grateful for the representations made by the objectors, and I'm grateful to Mr. Roberts for his attendance and being able to respond to the concerns that people have. As I indicated at the start of the meeting, we will now go into a secret, not a secret conclave, but we have to go into private. It's the law. normally we would retire into a room at the town hall and we'd come back in and tell you. But unfortunately, we don't know how long it would take to determine the matter. It's not fair to keep everybody hanging around. So the decision will be communicated to you in writing within 5 days. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you again for your attendance and for taking the time and trouble to come along.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we can log ourselves off now. There we go.
You don't need me for anything, Chair?
Sorry, Councillor Phillips on mute. But no, I don't believe he needs you at the moment. And Councillor Chris,
Councillor
can I ask that
Peter,
you
need
leave
to
as well?
depart as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
thank you for allowing me to attend, Councillor Phillip and members. Thank you very much. It's been very informative and very fair hearing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
John.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
thank you, members. If